Alright, here we go, guys. Got a few fun topics today. Let's start out with the 9/11 Commission. Wait, what's this one? The 9/12 Commission? You know, there was that Capitol riot where a handful of people died of natural causes and then the cops shot one protester. That's tantamount to 9/11, right? Same basic deal. Well, that certainly seems to be the way these people are playing it. Getting some pretty rough articles here. So, the Democrats are trying to push for a new 9/11 commission, which everyone knows birthed everyone's favorite law, the Patriot Act. So, Republicans seem to have stopped that from happening by filibustering in the Senate. Now, the way it's being portrayed by the corporatist media, by the Democratic operatives, is that this is solely to hide their own guilt in, the Capitol riots, or to protect their friends in the Capitol riots. So, now that this vote has happened, we're getting some pretty intense articles. This is the first one from CNN. Now that the GOP has killed the January 6th commission, Democrats must play hardball. So this one is actually labeled opinion, unlike most of CNN's articles, which are just opinion pieces but labeled as news. So that gives them license to go even more overboard than they usually do. So this is just going nuts. There are a few defining crises in American histories that are instantly known by their date. December 7th, November 22nd, September 11th. I'd honestly like to see a poll. How many Americans know December 7th, November 22nd? I mean, September 11th, sure, people know that. How many people know these first two? But, the reason they put all three of those in is making it seem like it's just a regular thing to have these dates. What they're really trying to do is make it seem like the Capitol riots are the same as 9/11. That's the point of the framing. That's what they've been pushing for a while. And this article is just going even more explicit, even more verbose in that direction. So they want another 9/11 commission. And the ostensible argument here is that they want to do an investigation to find out what happened. Well, if they want to do that, there are obviously law enforcement officers looking at any crimes that were committed. There are people being tried for trespassing and, whatever laws were broken. And beyond that, Congress can just, impanel witnesses, issue subpoenas, do whatever fact-finding mission they want to do. There's no real information that can be got through this commission that can be not got through other means. The reason they want to do this is to build credence in the notion that these Capitol riots were this big thing that needs a big reaction. Something as big as the Patriot Act. But the Patriot Act still exists. We still have, no due process, no right to privacy. The government can still listen to all of your phone calls, read all of your emails, do whatever it wants in that regard. So they're pushing for something more than that. It's not clear what, but whatever this 9/12 commission isn't going to recommend... Well, luckily, it looks like the 9/12 commission isn't going to happen, because it got filibustered in the Senate. But if it were to happen, it wouldn't recommend that they do nothing. So whatever that is would be more draconian laws. Some kind of extension of the Patriot Act, or maybe they'd be able to think up something even worse. Here's another article, shows how deep the rot is. The framing is, the only reason you would not want in Patriot Act on steroids is because you're pure evil, because you're corrupt, because you have something to hide. There's, it's any article that doesn't at least tell you what the other side's argument is not giving you an honest breakdown of the facts. Not that we would expect them to be giving you an honest breakdown of the facts, but this is the news. So it's worth pointing out that this is not news, it's just what calls itself the news. And anytime the corporate media pushes this hard for something, using such obscene, misleading tactics, think weapons of mass destruction, anytime the corporate media is just so obsessed with some story, think Russiagate, where they have no evidence, but they're just using every weapon in their arsenal to convince you that it's the case, you better be wary of that story, because they're trying to push for something. In this case, it looks like it's enhanced powers for the military-industrial complex. That's kind of what it feels like, but we don't know for sure. And one other note is that in here, they're still trying to use that officer that died of natural causes. Whatever, I don't see exactly where it is. It's in one of these articles. They're still trying to use that guy's death, because that was one of the biggest lies that they were pushing about these Capitol riots. They were saying that he got beaten to death with a fire extinguisher, when we knew from the very beginning that any decent reporting, there were facts that came out right at the beginning, that he texted his brother that night and said, brother's like, are you alright? He's like, yeah, I'm fine, got pepper sprayed a little bit, but I'm okay. Turns out that he died of a stroke later that night. Medical examiner ruled it was natural causes. But there was this story about him getting beaten to death with a fire extinguisher, which was demonstrably false from the very start, and that got pushed insanely hard by all these bullshit news guys, and they finally had to drop that after, I don't know what straw broke that camel's back, but eventually they admitted that was fake, but they're still bringing it up. But let me see if I can see. No, whatever. Who cares? They're still trying to use that guy. Alright. Let's move on, because that story, it's something that's been going for a while, but now that it did get filibustered in the Senate, they're just ramping it up. You're seeing these articles just insane, over the top. Alright. Oh yeah, this was the last one. Oh my god, they killed it. Alright, next up, Matt Gaetz. So, what's going on with this guy? Is he out of the woods? Because I thought, it came pretty close to looking like it was over with him because of this story, where he had some kind of sex guy allegations. They were claiming that he had something with underage people, maybe something about transporting them across state lines, like violating the Mann Act or whatever. They were describing it as sexual trafficking, or human trafficking or something, because he paid for someone's plane tickets to come fuck him in another state. Those were the allegations. Who knows if it was even true? But the media was going real hard on this guy, And it looked like it was maybe going to work. But I'm starting to think maybe this guy's out of the woods. Because look, this story is from a week ago. May 21st is an article about the sex guy stuff, about his ex-girlfriend allegedly going to do something. This is a nothing story. Just like, oh, there's this procedural thing which is maybe going to mean something someday. Definitely doesn't mean anything right now, but oh, look, he's definitely totally fucked because some little procedural thing ticked along and maybe. So it's one of those nothing stories like you would see every week in Russiagate where, oh, we have this new bombshell. It definitely means Trump is fucked. At some point, we'll show you when it's here for sure. But this definitely is the one. This definitely is the one. This is one of those stories, but this was a week ago, and this was the most recent one I could find on that issue. Now they're hitting him with these other stories. Like, this was the one that was going on today. Something about some yacht deal and money went missing. And then this other one about him citing the Second Amendment with regards to big tech oligarchy. You know, I haven't read the details on these stories, but it doesn't matter. The point is that they're no longer... it was, you know, the media had circled wagons. Or circled wagons isn't the right metaphor. But the media had all were working in alignment. They were all attacking him with the same narrative. Matt Gaetz fucks underage girls. Matt Gaetz fucks underage girls. Do. And now we haven't seen him saying anything about it. Not even the week petering off stuff in a week. The new articles are scaremongering about how powerful he is. There was something about how talking about how he might run for president if Trump doesn't do it. And look at how horrible that is, because Matt Gaetz is such a bad guy, and we wouldn't want him to be president. So that's what the news cycle about him is now. So I'm wondering, maybe he actually made it through that attack on him. Who knows? But really, there was so much heat on him. I thought it was over. But maybe not. Alright, next one up are these vaccine passports are in, what is it? Denmark. Let's pull up that story. So it's saying, yeah, they are... July 1st, they'll be live, where you have to use this app on your phone to go to the hairdresser, to do all sorts of stuff, and to travel to different places within the country, to travel abroad. So, I think this might be the first one that's actually a vaccine passport that's going live worldwide. And so people have been talking about these, whether or not it's going to happen. It looks like this one is going to happen. I mean, it's... how necessary are they at this point? Aren't we pretty well through this pandemic thing? Do we really need to go this far to restrict freedoms? I mean, you start out with these European people who are more about compliance than they are about maintaining their freedoms. So, who knows? But it is a little scary that you see these start to actually happen, where these private companies have access to your medical data and control where you can go. And obviously they're going to use that information to sell you more targeted ads, and they're obviously going to monetize all of this medical information that you're giving them, right? When has a tech company that you give personal information to ever not monetized it? And, you know, they're going to find some other more fucked up ways to make money off of this situation. And odds are it's not going to benefit you in the end. So it is a little scary that we're seeing Denmark actually put these into action at a point in time when it's, you know, how much do we really need these? But the good news is the US it's seeming really unlikely. There are so many people who are just done with all this COVID hysteria in general, with, even all the mask theater, with all the lockdown stuff. You're seeing a lot of states pass laws saying vaccine passports are not acceptable within those states. So I have a feeling it's not going to happen in this country, but we'll see. You can never say for sure. And then I'm curious about one little detail here, how this is the more recent article, but if you go back to this BBC one, this was a little bit older, and this talks about how you have the vaccine or a negative test within the last 72 hours. That's the same as this article, but the older one also talks about proof of a previous infection within a certain time period, which would make sense because you have those antibodies. And there was a new study talking about how the antibodies last a long time. So, longer than the 12 weeks they're talking about here. So, but then this more recent article doesn't mention the antibodies. So I wonder if that is going to be a part of their requirements or not. Yeah, it's an interesting little tidbit. We'll see where they end up going with that. Alright, our last story today, we're at some updates on the lab leak. Starting out with our boy, Dr. Fauci. He had talked about gain of function in 2012. And, he's been funding gain of function directly in Wuhan, probably in other places, through money at the NIH, through subgrants and stuff. That's what Rand Paul was grilling him on the other day. Obviously, he favors gain of function. And so what came out recently was that he had written some paper in 2012 where he was just hyping up the concept of gain of function in general, and how, it's outweighed the risk, how, the knowledge you would get from this gain of function research is worth more than the risk of causing a pandemic from doing gain of function research. So that's just another one. I think people who've been following it closely knew that was his position the whole time. But the fact that this story is going wide is another mark against Fauci, because he's really fallen. His credibility in the last few weeks has really gone down the toilet. The mainstream media was just holding this guy up as an infallible saint, and they are not treating him the same as of late. So this is just one more notch down the ladder for him. We got a couple other lab leak details. So, scientists at the COVID lab admitted to being bitten by bats. And there was footage, apparently, of them, just disregarding the different PPE protocols and handling bats, and talking about being bitten by bats and, collecting feces without gloves and stuff. And, swollen arms from being bitten. So, yeah, the bat lady said this job is not as dangerous as everyone thinks. And this will just do a little more, I think, to drive home the point in the public consciousness that every time you see people talk about the lab and where, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, there's always pictures of that bat lady in the spacesuit. But that spacesuit is something you wear in a level 4 lab. Most of the coronavirus research done at the Wuhan Institute of Virology was done in a level 2 or 3 lab. A level 2 lab is the same requirements as the U.S. dentist's office. you're supposed to wear gloves and wear like a lab coat and stuff. Very lax virus prevention standards. And apparently people were disregarding that, were taking off the gloves and stuff. And even if you're wearing gloves and a bat bites right through them, it's not going to do much to stop the spread of a disease. So I think this is just going to do a little more to help convince the general population that it is conceivable that a virus escaped out of a lab, as apparently happens dozens of times every year through laboratories that do gain-of-function research. It's usually not that big of a deal, but if that particular virus was a really bad one, it could cause COVID-19. Alright, the last article we're going to be talking about today is by the Washington Post. So, Facebook recently apparently in February, they banned you from posting that COVID was made in a lab. Which is insane. Just classic. How do you expect to have a society that advances ideas if you're not allowed to talk about ideas? If the only thing you can say in the public square is, yes, the government is good, then how do you expect to move innovation forward? It is insane that any controversial idea, you're only allowed to say what the people in power tell you can say. That is just the most crazy-ass backwards policy. The fact that anyone supports that notion is bonkers. But apparently that was Facebook's policy since February, and now that there is ample evidence supporting the COVID or the lab leak theory or hypothesis, now they said it's okay for people to opine that it might have come from a lab. But Washington Post is not a fan of that. So their headline here, Facebook's reversal on banning claims that COVID-19 is man-made could unleash more anti-Asian sentiment. So it's this classic, woke liberalism where it's like, let's protect the people in power by pandering to wokeism. It's the same thing as, well, what does Wall Street want to do right now? Alright, well, they want to pass this law that's going to steal a bunch of money from poor people and give it to all the hedge fund companies. So, let's create a committee that's going to do that law, but let's make the head of that committee a black woman. Boom, there we go. You can't criticize her, because that would be racist. And so this is this great progressive law. It's the same tactic. You see it all the time here, all the time now. And here you see Washington Post doing it to criticize Facebook's decision to allow criticisms of the centers of power by saying that allowing open discussion on the concept of COVID origins is racist. So I don't know how much we need to read through this. It's the most obvious thing in the world that whatever. It's obviously you should be able to question whether or not COVID came from a lab, whether or not it was man-made. Experts say companies needed to be even more vigilant as the lab theory is given more credence. So the implication there is like, you shouldn't be able to even mention Wuhan on Facebook. Like, if you mention the word China and the word coronavirus in the same paragraph, they should just delete your whole account. Because otherwise, like, Asian people get mugged or something. That adds up. It's... Alright. I'm not going to spend too much time explaining how crazy this is, because I think it's self-evident. The reason they expect this to work is they expect people to read the headline and just say like, yeah, well, racism is bad, so fuck Facebook for doing that. They don't expect people to ration this one all the way through. This is only meant to be seen from a distance and be like, oh, Facebook did something that's racist? Well then, fuck Facebook. That's... If you read into it any deeper than that, then you're going further than the writers of this article intended for their audience to go. Alright, those are the articles I had tonight. You guys have a good one.